I am live, and maybe it's safe for me to share my screen as I wait for Sean to come in. Share screen. There you go. Screen is shared. Get rid of this right here. And we want to say service keys or something like that. And well, surely I've done what's this over here? This right here. Go back up. Something like that. So it'll be something like this, where something like that maybe. Probably may not even be a token. Um, put this right here. Get rid of that. Okay. And then from there, we probably say it's not status code. Then we probably want to can't do anything, right? You just say throw new exception. And say that. Let me see if I anyway. And say that. Gotta be careful how we do this. Fail to initialize application. Or you could say fail to initialize courier services. Maybe application is better. What else do we want to do? We probably want to. What do I want to put right here? Hey, Sean.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
I got to. I might have to cut out early because my wife's not home today. My son's sleeping, but he might wake up and need attention. So we'll see.
Okay. I can stop sharing for right now. I'm trying to learn Clojure, trying to get all these, what, half a dozen, I don't know what you want to call it, microservices deployed, and trying to work a full-time job, and trying to consistently run 2 miles every morning, which I skipped this morning, and trying to every like other day trying to do my pull-ups and my dips, which is like another hour. I'm having a hard time making up for time or finding time.
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't want to give up my learning of Clojure because then that means I wasted that person's time. So I just find it really hard because I'm like, I really need to start making progress trying to get this speech delivery thing like in QA mode.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I already solicited this person to mentor me. We had 2 sessions already. I really need to show progress so that he doesn't think I'm wasting his time. So maybe tomorrow morning, I'll probably try to carve out a couple hours to try to do some tutorials from the book that I bought in Clojure. That's it.
Cool. For your deploying those services, are you doing that by hand or are you setting up pipelines to do that?
No, I'm doing it by hand. Um, I feel like using like Azure pipelines or any type of pipeline thing, that would be like a second step, right? First, you have to like do it by hand and then you automate it, or no?
Well, I mean, you might want to do one by hand just to get the procedure down, but I mean, after that, using Azure or GitHub pipelines, you should be able to just make it so that you know, as soon as you merge it in, it just, you know, builds a release, and then you can either have it gated where you push it, or you know, uh, have it auto deploy. If you're confident in your tests.
Uh, I think there will probably be some challenges because I s- I hard code the environment within the application itself. So like I have something like similar to like an enum. I think it is an enum where it's dev, QA, and production. And so depending on the environment, I have a function that will pick the appropriate endpoint, right? So there's three different like there's three possible endpoints for a courier account service. There's three possible endpoints for a delivery request service, right? Each endpoint, there's an endpoint for the dev environment, there's an endpoint for the QA environment, there's an endpoint for the production environment. So I'm not sure based on the way that I coded it if I could really use like pipelines because I hard coded. I I'll hard code like the configuration within the app to point to like in this case QA, and I feel like I would have to somehow because there's no web config, there's no app config for like these mobile applications. So I feel like somehow whatever automation code that I configure for pipelines would have to somehow parse a CS file or a F sharp file in my mobile app to figure out which environment to deploy to.
Well, couldn't. Well, how are you doing that manually then?
Manually, I literally say environment equals dev or environment equals QA
Like you change it in the
within the
code?
actual file. Yeah.
Oh, um, could you use a different build setting in, um, you know, Visual Studio so you have release whatever, and then
So
just
like if pound release, then or if pound debug, then yeah, set environment to dev. Else if pound
yeah,
not
yeah,
debug, then it's either QA or production.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if you're doing it without a config file, um, that would that would be the way I would see to do it. Use a compiler directive, and then just the problem with that then is you have to compile a different asset for each environment, which maybe isn't a big deal if it's just because it's just the mobile app that would be that way. But for the service microservices, you should be able to put app configs and stuff in there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So those should be all able to be pipelined.
Well, that just removes the dev environment from the equation, how would I distinguish between a QA environment and a production environment when I'm compiling the app?
You can you can create your own build. Heck, it is it the terms escaping me this morning. Or 1 second. Your own configuration.
Or would it just somehow when I do a commit, there's an additional argument that I can add for it to basically know if it's a QA environment or a prod environment or something?
Yeah, let me. I don't think I've got anything. 1 second.
So potentially commit and push, provide an additional parameter. Somehow that parameter within Azure pipelines gets retrieved, or the value of that parameter gets retrieved, and then it's able to decide based on that value of that parameter or argument. Well, yeah, we're talking about parameter value. If it needs to deploy to production or deploy to QA.
Yeah. 1 second. So in terms of the build, am I sharing just a Visual Studio screen, right? I think you can set it up in here to be like, want to build QA, or let's go prod. So then I think within, so you add that here. So you've got now, like, instead of just debug, release, or whatever, you got one for prod. And then I think within your project settings, you can do like, put a symbol in here for like that. And then you could say like, such that if you're in debug, it's not there. Release, it's not even there, but prod. And then all you'd have to do is build it in prod mode instead of release mode or QA mode. So you'd be tying it to builds. It isn't ideal. Like, I think the ideal pipelines is that you're building one artifact and then you configure it per environment. You could also make it so that maybe you don't have an app settings or a web config, but you just literally put a .ini file or a .config file, open it up, read it, and make it the environment. Although then that would make it pretty easy for people to toggle to different environments. But if you wanted to do it in a build sense, this is how you could do it.
Yeah, I want to do it in the build sense. I like this.
Yeah, I'm assuming F#'s got similar directives, but if not, you could just move this little bit to C#. But yes, you just add a configuration, then add a compilation symbol for that specific configuration to your build that specifies it, and then you can put whatever you want here to toggle things on. This is mostly used for like differences with like if you're building for Linux or Windows and stuff like that, not so much for environments, but could be used for this. So
yeah, I just learned something new. Thank you.
Oh yeah, no problem.
That was really helpful.
Yeah, I suppose if anything else, it'd be helpful for even just locally if you want a really quick switch between, because you can copy your settings from debug and stuff too. So if you wanted to, set up specialized builds for, QA debug, you could. But
Hey, Gamlor, how are you? Yeah, like, how long ago was I supposed to be done with this app? Was it last year?
by Easter, like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I'm pretty proud of the code base. I'm not so proud of the customer app, but I'm proud of all the other services I built and the courier app. They're the code base, at least for me. I think it's pleasant. I think I'll use that word, pleasant. So the customer app, that's when I was trying to figure things out with how to merge F sharp with mobile development. And so, I mean, it's experience, it's lessons learned, and I took those lessons learned and applied it to the courier implementation.
Yeah, well, time to rewrite it, right?
I'm not rewriting that. I'm not rewriting it. If it actually gains traction and it generates income, then yeah, I'll probably hire a couple people to rewrite it. But the likelihood of them rewriting it still using F sharp is probably next to nothing. Because I mean, how many developers are going to have a skill set of in this case in the future Maui and F sharp? It's probably me and probably one person per continent. So
Yeah, there's probably a few out there, but to get that plus at a rate that you'd want to pay and stuff, probably. Eh.
yeah, and I have to trust them. Like people frown when I say this. They have to have social recognition as a program, as a F sharp developer and Xamarin. Like if you don't have social proof, like to me, it's a gamble. And everybody disagrees with me on that, but that's fine. Like when you catch a drug case or a murder case or a divorce case, go ahead and just use your warm and fuzzy feeling. Don't use social proof. Just hire based on if they're a good learner and see how that works out for you. Hence, I got into like a Twitter, not really a Twitter argument, but like a couple of weeks ago when they were saying, "How do you find a good developer?" I provided like a list. People very much disagreed with me when I said their Stack Overflow reputation, which I probably should have just said like their professional web footprint, but they didn't think that that was a good uh, identifier for talent. I disagree, but whatever.
Yeah, I would agree with them. There's I think it's a hint, but it's not like a very important thing because there's a lot of people who work their job and then don't do anything on like social media and stuff like that, but they're excellent programmers. They just don't see the point of projecting that in the internet or working extra hours and putting together blog posts and stuff like that.
I agree. There are excellent developers, and I would argue that if they don't do that, if they don't even like make public their notes as they spend half a day to a couple of days to a week trying to figure out how to do something and they keep it to themselves, that's their decision. But they shouldn't complain if they get passed up for someone else that does document their journey as a professional. Like, because I feel like they're kind of contributing to the problem with HR and tech recruiters, where everybody just looks for buzzwords or keywords, and how are they really going to be discovered? And I feel like they're not. I mean, it could be word of mouth as long as you don't piss anybody off during your entire tenure at an organization. But outside of that, yeah, I mean, I agree that there's probably a lot of developers that are good that don't publicize their stuff. But how do you find them? How do you discover them? People lie on their resume. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's true. Actually, but that's you could get somebody who does a lot of the opposite where they look great on paper, um, and they're well known in this industry for something, but then they want to
I know.
mix view model
I know
logic.
this firsthand.
Then they want to mix view logic in with their view models. So
No.
you know, but
Yeah, and I'm sure people probably have said the same thing about me. So
yeah, it really should be. What's difficult is that it. I mean, because we're also, I think, a lot of cases people tend to be a bit more compassionate in terms of employment, but I mean, it really should be like a hire fast and fire quickly. But that's now that's a cold approach to things. But
is it?
yeah, I mean, it's cold in terms of, you know, when somebody comes to work for you, they're, unless they explicitly lied about stuff, which I've heard some stories about, but um, you know, they uproot themselves and, you know, make a big life change, and
Yeah,
it's
pre-COVID.
compassionate to give everyone, well, yeah, to give everyone a chance. But I mean, people's lives are on the line, so it's, I think it's because people aren't, you know, we're not cold sociopaths. We give
So
people way more chances than they deserve,
yeah, to be
probably.
fair, like people such as myself, speaking from experience, may literally quit a job to take on this new opportunity to find out that it's it's worse than the job that I just quit. So like I've been there before, and that is annoying. Like you get sold on like a job description, and then when you actually, you know, quit your other job, start this new opportunity, it's not what they really sold you on. And like yeah, so
Yeah, it
I
goes
get it.
both ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Oh, so I cannot sneak by as an F sharp developer by polishing my CV. You can sneak by as long as I'm not the one vetting you, gambler.
oh, I think my son might be up.
Uh-oh.
Oh, maybe it could be my dog too.
Summer's almost over, man.
Oh, yeah, he's up.
All right, well, I guess that's the end of this masterminds.
Yeah, well, let me go see if I can get him settled here quick. I'll be right back.
All right. In the meantime, I'll just share my screen and go back to my code, post to DevOps service keys function. I don't know what this should be. I'm just gonna say NA. That shouldn't really matter, right? Um, because this is potentially a courier that's not even registered. But I could probably, I mean, if anything, I would like to have an endpoint. Not endpoint. What do you call it? Local IP. You just say local IP, right? Like that. So within Xamarin Forms, how do I acquire the local IP? So let's say Xamarin Forms, local IP. Yeah. And they say that there's this notion of DNS get host addresses. I don't know what I'm looking at. That got voted up. There has to be a simpler one. This one right here. All right. So we go over here and we say, "Bar Gambler, you gonna co-review my stuff?" Now, to be fair, this is code behind, right? So it's going to be messy, man. Like, yeah, I know like that method looks like it's probably like 50 lines. I get it. But just as your code review on my stuff, just take into consideration this is code behind. And a lot of this stuff is going to be removed anyway. Like this right here. It's just test code like that.
All right, he's settled for now.
Sounds like you're back.
Yeah,
How
we'll
often do
see.
you track IP addresses within your applications that you write?
How do you track
I said,
them?
how often do you?
Oh, I've never had to do it myself, but uh,
You never like
there's.
log it, like you don't use it when you log.
Oh, yeah, but it's been set up. Usually, it gets just set up once for the logger that we're using, and then not really
Okay.
after that. So it's like one time.
Uh, you ever get nervous that, well, you primarily just program in C sharp, period, right? You don't have like some other passion language that you're restricted from using.
No, occasionally I'll do C coding because I used to do C regularly. Um, Occasionally I try to revisit it. It's so hard though now that yeah, I mean because C sharp is a C based language, so it's like I'll be like, oh, how do I do this again? But no, other than C, occasionally I'll whip out Python, but not very often. So yeah, C sharp 99% of the time.
I feel like my F sharp skill set is going to like slowly degrade, especially when I'm trying to learn Clojure and my full time job is C sharp.
Well, I mean, it's not going to degrade in that if you spun back around to it, it'd be like getting back on, on a horse, but like or on a bike or whatever. But yeah, if you're not constantly doing something, you're not specializing in it. You're not going to be as fast as you were when you're doing it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, some of my greatest fears, I say greatest fear, is like
Spiders.
just forgetting some of the core libraries that will prevent me from writing hella code, right? Like not like losing awareness. So like F sharp dot core. Um, that's all. So like I mean like I know I could still like implement most things, but not really being aware of the what's already in the libraries that can just do it for me within like 5% of the code that I would initially write. So
Yeah, yeah, just knowing what's available. Um, be like going into C sharp and forgetting that system.collections.generic exists. I don't know if anyone would ever forget that, but you could easily find yourself implementing like a list if you weren't. Yeah.
I
Anyways,
I
that's
used
just
to
a really bad example, but yeah.
my C sharp job was certainly slowed down, but nevertheless would be up to speed in no time. What do you program in now, Gambler? He probably programs in like Python or something. Or no, JavaScript. It's one of them. So outside of that, I yeah, like I said, I'm getting all these services deployed. I'm learning a lot. Some of this is getting burned into my brain. My objective, with a high probability of this speech delivery thing failing, is to be undeniable as an Azure architect based on me building a Uber Eats type of gig economy app and it being in production, regardless of if it only has one transaction a week. Um, Ended up talking to a recruiter like 2 or 3 days, Friday. No, today is Friday, 2 or 3 days ago, And I was like, hey, what are the rates for like a cloud architect that's more focused on development and not sysadmin or system administration? And he was like, oh, I see this one for 100. And I'm like, nah. You don't see any others? He's like, oh, here's one with this, I think he said Wachovia Bank. He's like, this one pays 130 an hour. I'm like, all right, you and I, we're going to talk in about another 3 months. So, because yeah, my understanding was it would be like around 120, 125 an hour for like an Azure architect, maybe even I would expect the AWS architect would probably be even more than that. But that's where I'm going, man. I'm trying to collect like 20,000 a month, you know, which is, if you ask me, if you ask me like 10 years ago, I would think that that's impossible. But now I honestly believe that like I'm on a path to at least having the skill set to interview for that amount consistently. So, am I out of my mind or what?
I don't know. I mean,
You don't know if I'm out
I
of my
don't
mind.
think that the yeah, I don't know if the rates are like that for because familiarity with some of these things is um it seems like it's probably more ubiquitous than you think, but maybe not. Um I
I only know one person, which is one of my mentors, and he's a certified Azure architect. That, like, personally, I only know one person that is doing or can do what I'm trying to do, like on a personal level. Like, do you personally know anybody, maybe outside of work, outside of your job, that has that skill set?
that has Azure sets or
Like, they can literally build from scratch an application that's fairly complicated with several services running, and they can deploy and do all that stuff, handle security. Um,
yeah, I mean I know people that they wouldn't probably spend the time to do it outside of
uh,
work, but they certainly have the capability to do it.
and we're not talking about like your social media friends. We're talking about like a personal relationship with like a friend, a uncle, a cousin.
Oh no, not like a family type. I don't even know.
Well,
I
not
got one
family, but
other
someone
note
that you actually have a personal relationship with.
like that I've worked with. Yeah, yeah,
No, no,
yeah.
no, not work with, just in general. Like, you may work at an organization that may hire somebody, but like just your private life. Do you know
Oh,
anybody?
in my private life, so family and friends. So like outside of my family, I've got maybe like two friends, and they're not really developers. So no,
Okay,
um, yeah, not really. But I mean, people I've worked with that aren't in that role certainly could be if they just, you know, that they could easily put stuff together and throw stuff out there like that. I mean, I feel like given time, I could do it. Um,
okay.
yeah,
You're playing down my accomplishments, but it's okay.
yeah. Be hard. Well, I mean, one thing that about building an app, complicated set of systems like that, if it's your a single person, is that you can keep the mental model relatively strong in your head. The real problem with like being in these situations, you have teams where you got people working on all those things, and you're trying to glue it all together.
Yeah.
And I think we're, I think developers are, I think we're worse at working in teams than we like to think we are. Um, Good at it
I agree.
because it's just I don't know. I still think like the ideal solution would be to have like one developer just build any particular thing.
A component,
Yeah. Um,
which kind of goes contrary to Scrum. Like, I'm trying to replace agile, the term agile, with just Scrum. And so, like, yeah, I'm a huge advocate of like, you build it, you own it, Like, not the team, you, right? But everybody disagrees with me, man. Everybody's like, no, the team owns it. The team is responsible for the success. Leave no man behind. And I'm like, I don't think that works. Like, you have to acknowledge that people have different skill sets and that some people are stronger than others. And that as much as you would like developers to be interchangeable, you may have some success, but the more specialized it is and the more experience that's required, like, they're not interchangeable. And I think a lot of like product owners, scrum masters, or anybody that's tightly coupled to the scrum methodology that doesn't actually build systems, I think that's the disconnect.
Yeah, yeah. To me, it's all about the mental model, and like a person can have a pretty good mental model of something, but as soon as you start getting people in there that don't share that, they're going to do things differently, and now your mental model is weakened, and they don't have a good one to begin with. Seems to me like you could still utilize multiple developers, but it's like one person's responsible for building the thing, and then if they need work, they should define like a specific interface and say you build this thing and here's the spec to do it. Like you pawn it off as a separate component they own that you don't spend the details in. It's an abstraction to you. Um,
Exactly.
so it's which is, I mean, you could do that on a microcosm where it's a class, or a function set or a module or whatever, but it could be, an entirely different service that's part of the overall system. Um, as long as you're comfortable with, like I said, your mental model is that that's an abstraction you're using and you don't need to know the details of it. But when it's like, okay, I'm going to pick up this feature off of this thing, this deal, and I've got a good mental model of how this all works, but then three other developers pick up features on it, and then they just start changing how it's supposed to work.
Or tasks on
Yeah,
on a feature.
and then you get in there and it's like this was working like a little bit ago and now it's broken. I suppose that's, the code should be able to handle that, but I don't think it's really. I think it's really the idea here is that like you get, there's so many different ways to do things, and it's really difficult to communicate even in code, like how that thing is supposed to be structured and what you're thinking and what your grand design is, because you usually do stuff
Well,
thinking, okay, this is how it's going to be, and I'm going to get this in here later.
doesn't it kind of depend on the language that you're using though? Like, for example, you know that I have this whole thing of a specification library, and I have these function type signatures that I'm going to program to for the core operations of whatever subdomain that I'm working on. And so, like with F sharp, I think it's more obvious what model to program to than in C sharp, where like it's just very different. Like, now you have all these interfaces that you can attempt to create to try to expose what that model is going to be or that specification is going to be. But it's just a lot more of it that you have to sift through to get an understanding of what this domain is or what it's about. I mean, that's what I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe. I guess the trick would be to take somebody who knows F sharp, do your specification, and then try to bring them in to just add features and see if they do it in the way that you would expect it to be done, or if it's they build their own mental model and it's not the same.
Uh, yeah, I feel like I'm kind of trying to navigate that right now because like the concepts that I'm trying to like expose, you don't read it in any books. You don't see it on YouTube videos. It's not mainstream at all. It's just a technique that I've developed and cultivated based on reading several books and then like I don't know. Like, are you familiar with like martial arts?
My kids are in Taekwondo, so a little bit.
Okay. So I'm not sure if it's related to martial arts, but you study different disciplines or cultures of doing things, and then you cherry pick the parts that you like, and then you have your own type of art, right? Like I'm not sure if it's analogous to like martial arts. Like I thought like Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do was like similar to that, where he picked, parts of, I don't know, kung fu and whatever other forms of martial arts, and he created his own Jeet Kune
Hmm.
Do practice. That's kind of what I've done. But when you try to when you're leading in a like a lead capacity, and you're trying to like say, all right, this is the standard or the model that we should be programming to, kind of like, I feel like, because it's so alien and no one has ever like ever heard of that type of paradigm. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like if I should really be pushing it or not, or if I should just let things just be mainstream, even if it may obliterate the code base and take twice as long to deliver.
Yeah. Well, example of that, like one of the things that I did that I'm curious to see if anybody has a reaction to is I in a couple places I started to use delegates instead of interfaces in C sharp. And I still use the dependency injection container. I just write a factory that pulls the services out and then creates a partially applied function with those services in it to then push into the
You could do that in C#.
yeah. So like yeah
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I could show you real quick.
No, I don't want to derail. Please finish your thought.
But yeah, but it's the normal thing to do would be to just, which is pretty much the same thing, would be to create an interface, then create a class on that interface, and then inject the it's pretty much the same thing. Then inject the dependencies in the constructor, which the class then is basically just a partially applied function. It's like syntactically they're different, but the result is the exact same. But one is more canonical to the way that people do things in C sharp, which is, like you said, interfaces and stuff. But and then one of them isn't.
Well,
So
yeah, like I think like something that's kind of challenging is the fact that we're in C# or Java. We're trying to build this. One second, this may be important. Hold up.
okay. Well, it's the Sean Show now. Hello, everyone. I'm live on his feed, on Scott's feed. Kind of by myself now. Hope you're all having a good day. One of the things I'm very self-conscious about is when I sit here on this camera, I feel like I've got moobs. I'm just going to put that out there. I think it's just the way that this shirt is and the way that I do have a bit, but not as bad as it makes it look. Oh, I'm talking to myself. I'm going to just build that example quick. Maybe Scott will be back. Maybe he won't. I don't think he's got. I don't think I can share without him doing that. just me right now. Scott took a phone call. I'm not sure if he's coming back or not. We'll see. We'll see. So you do TypeScript a bit. Should get Scott onto that so that he gets over his fear of web development. He's not back. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I'm not really a fan of it either. Every once in a while, I get this romantic idea that I can do this with Vue and stuff like that. But then I run into things that it's so frustrating. It's just like a random CORS issue that you didn't expect happened to be the other day when I was trying to integrate a component into a Vue app, and it's just spend hours trying to figure out what the problem is, and I could never really figure it out. So I switched approaches, but I don't know, stuff like that. Just everything feels so cobbled together and unstructured, and it's gross feeling. Trying to put together an example of this is a bad example, but I guess my screen doesn't really share either. Oh, well, now he shared my screen. Let's go with this instead. Yeah, it does feel super fragile all the time. And like, unless you're doing like a very like minimal thing where you're just using everything's vanilla, but if you are trying to build it with a bunch of other stuff, it's frustrating. I thought I'd put that example together while you were gone, so.
Okay. Gambler has a cool job. He actually gets to use modern languages for his day job. And I get frustrated with modern web development as well. I get frustrated with web development, period. It doesn't even have to be modern. If you
This is a really bad example.
of your partially applied functions or partial application.
Yeah. Why isn't it finding? That's weird. Yeah, I said this is a really bad example, but yeah, let me guess these are different types because I haven't been really paying much attention to what I've been doing. So like, I think the idea was with this approach is that, yeah, I don't really know what I was thinking. Like, it's just, I hate creating interfaces for like one thing when this technically works as well. So you can inject like in an IOC container within like ASP.NET Core, then you could do something like app dot, that'll be like services dot, I don't know, scoped get derp, and then you would put in here something like you put in like a factory here that takes in, and you could actually do that within here too, where you don't extract it, like so you get your services and go get. It's just you have to do some stuff by hand that you otherwise get if you just do constructor injection. But this kind of partially applied thing, I don't know. It's the exact same as doing like oh, better not do that.
What? Hold up. 27. Create get dirt function, and then you return a ID. What's 27? That's a funky syntax.
This right here.
Yeah.
This
Well,
is so this is the delegate type here, which is a function that takes an ID and returns a derp. This is syntactically the same as being like that, if you're familiar with that. These are the exact same signatures.
okay.
Um,
Oh, it
so
returns a function.
yeah,
It returns a
func is
function
func is
number.
just a
I know what func is. I'm just not used to seeing the syntax because I just don't see it used that much. And so I was looking at like line 27. I'm like, what is that? But okay,
yeah. So this is
you're returning a function.
yeah. So this is a function, basically a constructor function that returns a function.
Okay, yeah,
That
because
yeah.
I almost never see a function being returned. in C sharp, I always see a function being executed.
Yeah, I mean it could be, I suppose, like this too.
Yeah,
Will that
I
work?
get it.
Yeah.
I actually
But
prefer the original one you had, but yeah.
yeah. Well, you can get down and I mean I could have left this in here. I don't remember why I wanted to do this. It's just like I wanted to. Actually, I still don't know why I structured it this way. Maybe
Yeah.
it's just I like hate creating the extra curly braces and all the adding the thing there when it's really I need like one function that with some dependencies. And I don't know. Felt like maybe it was easier to get what I was trying to do done.
I'm an interface deleter in many code bases, especially the Java Spring code bases. Do, 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 do. How does he always get jobs where he can program in modern languages? That's the part I don't know about.
I don't know. Maybe you just start doing it and then wait till people yell at you. Because like I've stopped.
I've done that before.
Like one practice is that I've done is I've stopped putting things into separate files all the time. Like if they're a cohesive set of things that belong together, like I'll put it into one file in C# all the time now.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for someone to just come in and be like, no, we need to put everything into a separate file. And it's like, oh, come on. It's like, this is one line. I don't want to put it in a separate file. So like I'll create modules that talk about the thing I'm doing as the module name, and I'll just put all of the different things in there. So like, I don't know, like something validation or whatever, or I don't know, and then I'll just put all of the stuff for that whatever validation.
Yeah, I do it for like view models, and then a special type that is only used for presenting that data. I'll like throw that in the same file as the view model, and because it's not used anywhere else. So
Yeah.
we need to get you off C#. If you're writing this type of code, you need to just graduate to a functional language.
Yeah. Yeah,
You keep putting
probably.
lipstick on a pig.
Yeah. Yeah, I should. Maybe I should write some F sharp next week. We have a thing at work where I think, I don't know if it's just once a year or if it's multiple times a year or what. Um, they give us like basically a week to build whatever we want, kind of thing. It's a hackathon for work. So, I mean, you don't have to build something for the job. You could build something for, like, if you want to do an open source project or something, you could do that. But maybe I should write some F sharp next week. Although that kind of defeats the point because learning like a language inside of 24 hours while you're trying to also build something is, unless that's your goal is to learn a language and not to build something, it's kind of counterproductive.
Yeah, it's weird because since learning like F sharp, I feel like C sharp is like a vintage language that, believe it or not, because I treat it as a vintage language, I get to like I feel like I'm more creative with C sharp now. Like
Oh
it
yeah, no, I get
it's
what you're saying.
yeah, it's kind of like having a PlayStation 5, but also like blowing off the dust off of my Coleco or my Atari, and
Yeah,
like
it's the
yeah,
same thing going from C sharp to back to C. Like I want to do this. How do I do that? So like you make things up. Like how do I, like I've tried to build out like, because you can do function callbacks, but then you can't capture closures in C. Uh, so you can pass a function pointer along, but you can't like also grab the state that you're in. So you'd have to manually grab state. I've tried to do that where I've tried to store the state that's being operated on with the function and then pass that through implicitly using like you can, like with macros or whatever, you can. I think that's what was it Steve McConnell referred to as coding into the language. It's
Steve
like,
McConnell is the author of the book Code Complete.
yeah, I
I'm
think,
Wikipedia.
or was it him or was it? It could have been Uncle Bob too. I don't remember who talked about coding into the language. Where even if you have a language and you learn new techniques that aren't kind of canonical to what you normally see, you can kind of code into it and bend it to the way so you can get creative with how you structure things to make it work the way you want it to work. Might not be the, as productive as going in another language, but if you don't have the option, um, is it coding into the language? I can't remember where I heard that from.
Wouldn't that be a macro or no? Or is that a completely different concept?
Oh, in C or what?
So my understanding is like Clojure has these macros that like is part, it's part of like I can't even explain it because I haven't actually tinkered with it. But my understanding is like it's some it's kind of like scratch what I just said because I can't articulate what I mean.
Well,
If Gamma is
macros,
listening, he could probably help me with macros within Clojure and what it's meant to do.
macros in like C, they're like preprocessor directives. So it's like you can build really complicated things. It's kind of like that's just, it's almost like building out templates. Um,
Wasn't the pound debug and pound release at the beginning of this video a macro?
no, those are, well, they're preprocessor directives. But C
Okay.
sharp's preprocessor system isn't as sophisticated as C's. Um, you can do a lot in the C preprocessor. Like you can make generic types and all sorts of crazy stuff with it, um, down to like provide a few things and write out just tons of code. um, but they're really hard to maintain because it's basically like if you try to do things complicated with it, it's pretty hard to maintain. But yeah, it's just like, uh, He's got no closure
I
macros.
never wrote a closure macro yet. It's very powerful, but you should think twice, and times before you ever create one yourself, in my opinion. And always have a no macro API alternative. Yeah. So apparently, I don't really understand the concept of a macro, so I guess I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
It's 8:30. I actually have a full-time job now.
Yeah, I got to go and make sure my kids are settled in before my dogs are taken care of before I do the same. So, alrighty.
I'll say the same thing I probably said the last 3 weeks. I'll try to have half of my uh, backend services deployed, and maybe I could demo like part of it. I don't know. We'll figure it out. See ya.
See ya.
All right.
Ciao.
Bye, Gambler. Take care. And I guess I'm about to just end it. So, peace. Bye.